Chapter 329 Exterminating the Enemy. When Song Meng and company saw the Emperor of Yue attack the cross-legged Han Li, their hearts grew shocked. Although they were aware of their inability to effect the saber's attack, Song Meng and company still raised their arms in defiance. In hopes of slowing down the attack, they unleashed a torrent of fireballs and threw 8 talismans which transformed into huge stones. Unfortunately, their attacks were of no effect. With a light swing, they were easily swept away by the saber's huge radiance and had completely vanished without a trace. The saber streak changed direction once more and fiercely chopped down with vicious intent. As Han Li saw the sharp saber streak about to strike him, his expression didn't change except for forming a slight sneer. When the Emperor of Yue saw that Han Li was so calm, he was startled for a moment. Without thinking much more, he continued chopping down with the saber streak. The Emperor struck at thin air, as Han Li had suddenly disappeared. He discovered that he had returned to his original position at an unknown time, about 100 meters above the barrier of rainbow light. The Emperor of Yue's appearance became extremely unsightly, and he struck at the rainbow light while clenching his teeth. As the Emperor split open a hole and charged in, he saw Han Li indifferently gazing at him while still seated in his original position. This time, the Emperor of Yue didn't impulsively charge down. Instead, his entire body trembled, shooting out a huge beam of bloody light with astonishing momentum. He immediately followed this up with a black saber streak. Since the Emperor of Yue had prepared himself, he was able to clearly observe what followed. When the bloody light was about 3 meters away from Han Li's head, it disappeared without a trace as if it had been swallowed by something. At that same moment, he felt his devilish light suddenly return to its original location above him. The Emperor of Yue was astonished. Naturally, his following strike wasn't effective in the slightest. Once again, he was outside and high above the rainbow light. The Emperor's face turned pale, revealing panic for the first time. He no longer charged downward and instead continuously waved the demonic black blood saber. Endless streaks of crescent saber light flew in every direction in an attempt to break through the formation. Not long after the saber streaks flew off, a flash of white light caused the attacks to shoot back towards their original location. He was flustered for a moment before furiously continuing his incisive attacks. If the Emperor of Yue had been able to escape formation, he would have believed it contained a mere illusion technique and wouldn't have felt so anxious. If this were the case, he could easily break through this minor formation by relying on his devilish arts. But now that he was being teleported and his formidable attacks were being bounced back, he felt his heart plummet. Only great formation spells known as the Great Unbreakable Formations would have this type of restriction. Already perturbed by this abysmal turn of events, the Emperor of Yue felt a powerful surge of spiritual qi from the rainbow light barrier below him, causing his heart to tremble. He tightened his grip on the black saber and his bloody light hastily revolved around him, enveloping him in an impenetrable, blood-red whirlwind. Another 2 equivalently powerful spiritual pressures surged from within the rainbow light. Soon after, the rainbow light hummed for a moment and opened a 3-meter-wide passage. A dense cloud of small azure rods swarmed through the passage and rushed toward the Emperor of Yue in a grand torrent. These rods were from the azure rod treasure talisman Han Li had just activated. Closely following the cloud of rods, a small blazing sword and a yellow crystal ball flew out. After the 2 exited the passage, they underwent a strange transformation. The small red sword grew incredibly large, and the crystal ball emitted a blinding yellow light. Under Chen Qiaoqian's and Zhang Weiniang's control, the 2 treasure talismans silently split into different directions, attempting to flank the Emperor. As he watched these events unfold, the Emperor's face grew ashen. He madly flourished the black blood saber in his hand and shot out 8 huge saber streaks from within the whirlwind. With a sharp crackle of explosions, a majority of the small rods smashed into pieces upon meeting the attack. Han Li's face turned slightly white. Because his mind was connected to the rods created by the treasure talisman, he had suffered damage from the strikes. This blood saber was powerful beyond expectation. But fortunately for Han Li, he didn't have to forcefully defend against its blows. As for the Emperor of Yue, he was currently making his last stand. Even with the obstruction of the saber streaks, the small red sword, the yellow crystal ball, and the remaining swarm of azure rods were able to seize an opportunity to charge into the bloody wind. A storm of sharp whistles immediately rose from within the whirlwind as countless bursts of azure, red and yellow radiance surged against the black streak in confrontation. It was clear that the struggle within was incomparably intense. Suddenly, an abrupt yell of fury burst forth, accompanied by the sound of an explosion. The black, red, and yellow streaks of light all violently flashed for a moment before completely disappearing from the blood-red whirlwind. At that same moment, the complexions of Chen Qiaoqian and Zhang Weiniang paled and their eyes became spiritless. "Seventh junior martial sister, are you alright?" When Song Ming saw this, he hastily asked with concern. "It's nothing, his blood saber is just truly demonic. It was actually able to take down my and Zhang Weiniang's treasure talismans in mutual destruction. Now we will have to see whether or not junior martial brother Han's treasure talisman will be able to kill him," Chen Qiaoqian softly said. She took out 2 blue medicine pills, swallowing one and handing the other to Zhang Weiniang. "Your treasure talismans were destroyed." When the other Yellow Maple Valley cultivators heard this, their expressions became astonished. In their minds, only magic treasures should be able to contest with treasure talismans. Impressive. I suspect our enemy's demonic saber is actually a ruined fragment of some kind of magic treasure. After Zhang Weiniang swallowed the pill, her face became flushed and her lips reddened. The ruined fragment of a magic treasure? How is that possible? Chen Qiaoqian asked with astonishment. A series of earth-trembling booms suddenly rang out from above them, causing them to hastily look up in surprise. Separated by a thin layer of rainbow light, a great battle consisting of dazzling, chaotic bursts of azure and blood-red light was occurring above them. After a short moment, the bloody light greatly lessened and was thoroughly overwhelmed by the azure light. Afterwards, all traces of light had gradually disappeared, revealing the Emperor of Yue standing upright. His face had a vacant expression and his lips were trembling much like a piece of porcelain about to collapse. The Emperor fell straight from the sky without resistance, and softly landed on the rainbow light above them, his body nothing more than a pile of crushed flesh. Having seen this, all of Han Li's fellow sect members were rapt with joy. Song Ming even went over to Han Li and excitedly yelled, "Junior martial brother Han! You've killed that monster! I knew you could do it! I released the entirety of my treasure talisman's strength in a single instance to break through his bloody light. Otherwise, it might have taken quite a while." Han Li faintly smiled and spoke with a content tone. Being able to draw out such a great amount of an treasure talisman's might in a single instance wasn't something that everyone could do. Only after using and seeing so many distinct treasure talismans did Han Li receive the experience to do this. Although such an incisive method to take down the enemy greatly decreased the number of uses for a treasure talisman, its power would explosively increase. Such a method proved extremely effective against powerful enemies. Han Li had just comprehended this method a few days ago and was able to use this technique when it was least expected. As a result, he was able to deal the finishing blow to his heavily injured enemy. Naturally, this treasure talisman was fully consumed in the process and turned to ash. At this moment, those fire element's blood cores were at the forefront of his mind. After saying a few words to Song Ming, he released 2 puppet beasts without any hesitation and had them directly head over to the Emperor of Yue's corpse. When the others saw this, they didn't mind in the least. After all, the death of this enemy was almost entirely due to Han Li. Naturally, no one would fight Han Li over the spoils. Zhang Weiniang unexpectedly appeared somewhat pleased after seeing her sweetheart avenged and repeatedly expressed her thanks to Han Li. She also said that when the fallen hear of this in the underworld, they would certainly be grateful that Han Li had avenged them. Those words caused Han Li, who had come here with another objective in mind, to feel a bit embarrassed. He hastily changed the subject and suggested that the others hurriedly search other areas of the Imperial Palace for any Black School Fiend disciples that remained hidden. He also said that he had to stay behind and attend to a few matters, such as withdrawing the Great Formation. Hearing Han Li's words, how could the Yellow Maple Valley cultivators not understand what he had meant? He was clearly giving them the opportunity to loot the remains of the Black Fiend's school's nest. Song Ming beamed with happiness while the others found it somewhat embarrassing. Han Li then said, "Let's rendezvous after I finish putting everything in order. As for the Black Fiend schoolmaster, he should have enough high-quality items on his body to satisfy me." The others felt this was reasonable and did not further refuse. After all, everyone had suffered quite a bit from today's great battle. Thus, after Han Li withdrew the Great Formation, the others flew away on their magic tools. Only when the others could no longer be seen did Han Li feel reassured enough to wave his two puppet beasts over. They flew back toward Han Li with the results of their search.